It is now time for Diary of a Wrestling Fan with Bill Chase. And now, here he is, the man who claims to have a much bigger studio, apartment than Colt Cabana, Bill Chase! Thank you, Mr. Podcast Announcer, and welcome to another episode of Diary of a Wrestling Fan. I am Bill Chase, a podcast that chronicles my 33 amazing years of being a fan of professional wrestling. Thank you for listening on Spotify, on Anchor, wherever podcasts are streamed. Hit the follow, hit the subscribe, hit whatever button you have to hit. Keep following this podcast on whatever service you're listening from. If you happen to be listening to this on YouTube, hit that subscribe button right now. Okay, this week we're going to the very polarizing era that is 1995, late 1995. We're in the very beginning pretty much of the Monday Night Wars. Shots have barely been fired, but hey, they were many. But before we get to that, just want to give a quick plug, of course, to Pro Wrestling Ontario. Give us a follow on Twitter, on Instagram. Give us a like on Facebook. And if you listen to this podcast on YouTube, scroll to the top of the video screen on the top right. You'll see a link to Pro Wrestling Ontario. And once you're done listening to the podcast, click that link, hit that subscribe button. We got complete shows, including both Iron Cup tournaments. We have the backstage shenanigans of Foundation. We got matches. We got promos. We got it all, folks. Subscribe. Pro Wrestling Ontario. Okay, on with the show. We are covering In Your House 4, later dubbed Great White North, as the pay-per-view took place in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, taking place on Sunday, October the 22nd, 1995. As I said before, the Monday Night Wars have only been underway for just over a month, really, about a month and a half here. Nitro first aired on September the 4th of the year, and of course, Raw had been going head-to-head with them for the past several weeks, trading victories and whatnot. We were long away from the infamous 83 weeks, and of course, we're even longer away from the Attitude Era. 1995. Oh boy. That is a year that really doesn't get a lot of praise, does it? And with good reason. It seemed as though the WWF was trying so hard to try different things, but a couple things were hindering them. For one, Vince could not let go of the occupational gimmicks. This is something that many of the wrestlers who were part of the company back then have also criticized. Vince was trying so hard to make Diesel the corporate image of a white meat babyface, when really Kevin Nash should just acting like the badass he always was, against something that Nash himself, as well as Bruce Pritchard and others, have pointed out. Diesel had been champion for close to a year at this point, just a month shy of it, actually, and his reign was not going the best. The draws were not good. The business was down overall across the board. But again, we're looking back at me. I'm 12 years old in 1995, but even I notice that wrestling, even though as much as I love it, the WWF itself doesn't have the same pizzazz that it had when I was watching it even in 1992, for crying out loud. So I'm becoming more intrigued by WCW here. Nitro was a big reason for that. But there were a lot of things happening in WCW, despite some of the cheesiness. You have the Dungeon of Doom and whatnot. But again, this is going to be an unpopular viewpoint. As tacky and as ridiculous as the Dungeon of Doom would be, and as even worse, Halloween Havoc, which took place about a week after this, was, with the whole thing with the giant and falling out the building, the monster trucks, yada, yada, yada. As weird and tacky as that was, WCW still had a way of making me as a fan want to tune in to what the hell's going on. Even back then, I thought it was kind of strange and kind of like, because I'm only 12, I'm going on 13, I'm just starting grade 7 at this point. I think to myself, I know it's not the greatest wrestling I've seen, but I still like it. And even WWF was having some stuff that I enjoyed. But I guess as a kid today, I was over Diesel as champion at this point. I wanted Bret Hart to have the title back. And I didn't even hate Diesel, didn't even dislike him. I actually liked him a lot. But maybe I didn't know it at the time, but in my subconscious, I just know that his title reign sucks. I have no idea. I think Diesel's title reign had its moments, for sure. I didn't mind the feud with Sid. Okay, at least the feud with Sid made sense. I think really, though, the beginning of the end of maybe this whole thing with Diesel was the match with Mabel at SummerSlam, which was atrocious. And again, even I remember watching that match and thinking to myself, man alive, this sucks. Like, I actually thought that. Like, I would be distracted. Like, I remember watching that pay-per-view, SummerSlam 95, and just, I think I just started, like, because I used to draw a lot back then. Like, just draw pictures and that. I just start drawing pictures and just not care what's going on in that match. I didn't mind Diesel and Shawn's tag team. I thought that kind of revitalized them a bit. But again, that only did so much. The main event of the show going into it was Diesel versus the British Bulldog. Now, let's talk about the in-your-house concept itself before we get to that. In-your-house was a way to increase business on pay-per-views, offering a cheaper alternative, a 2-hour show, not even $20. Well, just about $20, I should say. To pay for the pay-per-view. The 2 hours, 5-6 matches, pretty quick, bada bing, bada boom, you're done. That was a way to bring in pay-per-view, more pay-per-view revenue, I guess, because, again, pay-per-view business at this time was the lowest it had ever been. So that is the in-your-house concept, of course. I'm sure a lot of you already know that, but still, it was really new at this point. Again, this is only the fourth one. Previous ones took place in May, July, and the month prior in September. All right, so to be fair, if I'm looking at 1995, if I had to pick a good time for the WWF in 1995, and again, that's not easy to do, it would probably be this time. There were some good things happening around this time in terms of building an intriguing story. For example, Shawn Michaels' star was really starting to propel to heights that it hadn't even been before, and he had already main evented at WrestleMania. He was a babyface now. He was massively over with fans. I thought the Barry Horowitz push for a mid-card angle was good. And he had a following. Like, I'm not saying the guy should have been the WWF champion. Not everyone needs to be the main event guy to get a push. I thought they could have done more with Horowitz, looking back in hindsight, than the mid-card. The stuff with the 1-2-3 Kid and Razor Ramon, with Kid being upset about being treated like a kid by Razor, and then also, quote unquote, trying to help Razor in his matches and pretty much costing him match after match. It happened the month prior at the Inner House in a match with Razor and Dean Douglas. And there we go, Dean Douglas. Now, here's the thing. I knew about Shane Douglas mainly from WCW. I knew about him a bit from ECW, as if you listen to my ECW podcast in the archives, that I knew that he was a big star there. And I recognized him when he came in as Dean Douglas. But I'm just like, I don't know. Like, I don't hate the gimmick as much as most people do. It's one of those things where I think it could have been great. And Shane himself talks about in many shoot interviews, how he would have done the character. And I think if he would have done the character maybe that way, it might have worked. I can't say for sure. Nobody can. But at the same time, though, who knows? And obviously, the backstage stuff with the Click, I knew very little about that at the time, next to nothing, pretty much. I did know that a lot of those guys were friends in real life. That's about all I knew, but I didn't know how deep that really went. Well, there was some good stuff in the WWF happening in late 1995. Yeah, we can criticize the feud with Bret Hart and Jean-Pierre Lafitte, but again, I know picking a good era in a bad year is like going to a bad restaurant simply because the napkin. But really, you sometimes, with the benefit of hindsight, you can look back and say, that stuff wasn't too bad. And the Raw they did a couple weeks before this, not the go home one, but the one the week before that, really set this pay-per-view up in a big way. Now, the original lineup for this In Your House, I will say it to you right now. Okay, so it was obviously Diesel defending his WWF Championship against the British Bulldog. Shawn Michaels defending the Intercontinental title against Dean Douglas. Mabel versus The Undertaker. Goldust making his debut against Marty Jannetty. The Smoking Guns defending the tag team titles against the 1-2-3 Kid and Razor Ramon. And Hunter Hearst Helmsley versus Fatu. Two of those matches would not happen. Now, on the subject of Goldust, I know this has been a topic that a lot of people have obviously debated over the years. When the introduction of his character, Goldust, I didn't get it at first. I didn't get Goldust until, I will say this about the new year, when he was starting to feud with Razor Ramon. So really, the character itself just seemed like he's a movie buff who dressed in gold. Okay. Again, I just didn't get it. Even watching the vignettes leading up to his debut here, I'm thinking to myself, he looks familiar or sounds a little familiar. So I'm trying to figure it out. But I'm like, oh, whatever. I don't know. But it was doing nothing for me at the time. So anyway, I should digress back to the big go, or not, sorry, not a go home angle, but a big angle that really put an emphasis on this show. It was a six-man tag team match on the October 9th Raw. And get this team: Shawn Michaels, The Undertaker, and Diesel. Again, you throw in Bret Hart and Razor Ramon there; those are pretty much all your top guys. But anyway, there was a team of the three of them taking on Owen Hart, Yokozuna, and the British Bulldog. Now, this match was actually quite good, from what I recall. I watched it maybe about 6, 7 months ago, but I recall it being very good, very entertaining. Because again, a lot of top guys are in this match. Owen, Yoko, and Bulldog I thought were great heels. Camp Cornette, they would later be dubbed several months later, but Yoko, of course, would be soon gone from that camp. So, in the match, the heels win, they cheat to win. It makes Bulldog, especially, look strong going into the pay-per-view against Diesel, which is really, really good. Again, Bulldog had just turned heel about 2 months before this pay-per-view, late August, after being a babyface for most of his WWF tenure. That's dating back to his time as one half of the British Bulldog back in the 80s. So once he turned, I felt he had new life. Like even back then, and I hated him. I felt betrayed. He was a guy, again, as a 12-year-old kid, I supported this guy for years. And this is the thanks I get as a fan who supported him. And I know this sounds like a bad sense of entitlement that you hear on Twitter these days. But no, as a fan, that's how I felt. And I'm sure other fans my age may have felt that way who love the Bulldog. And I did love him. So I want to see Diesel beat the piss out of him. So I had intrigue in this match. They had been keeping Bulldog strong on TV for several weeks, obviously building him up to this point because they knew they were going to put him in a main event title match. So then there's a big post-match beatdown, which involved Mabel coming in and helping attack The Undertaker. And The Undertaker's eye socket, orbital bone, was broken. Ouch. When you have Mabel and Yokozuna repeatedly leg dropping you, mind you, from what I've understood from many accounts from wrestlers over the years, Yokozuna's leg drops are the safest. So, I mean, apparently Mabel's the one who took the flack for this injury. Mabel already having heat from the SummerSlam main event, nearly losing his job. This probably didn't help him all that much. And I remember seeing some of those leg drops thinking, oh, that looks brutal even for them. Like, I always cringe when Yokozuna did his leg drops, but when Mabel hit his, there seemed to be like that extra crack there or whatever. I don't know. But either way, it took The Undertaker out of action. They didn't mention much about it on TV. I guess either they want to hope he can make the pay-per-view, the extent of the injury or whatever. And then Dean Douglas comes down, attacks Shawn, and drops him torso first onto the steel steps in like a suplex position. Again, this was a really good way to make the heels look strong going into the In Your House pay-per-view. Only problem is it wasn't the go-home show. But either way, that doesn't matter either way. I felt these guys looked really good going into this show. And I wanted to see all these heels get their asses kicked. So there you go. Goal accomplished, right? Now, I knew nothing about this at the time, obviously. Again, I had no access to the dirt sheet. The internet was relatively new at that time. We didn't have it yet. But Shawn Michaels was attacked apparently by multiple men, 2 men. I don't know. There's like 20 different accounts of this story I've heard, I swear. Bottom line, he was attacked outside of a bar in Syracuse, New York. Apparently suffered a concussion, stuff like that. Apparently was busted up pretty good. Involved Marines, I guess. I don't know. again, I've heard like 20 accounts. Some say it was Marie, some say it wasn't. Some say it was over a girl. Some say it was. I don't know. I think the only people that will know the truth will it's just Shawn, but apparently he was drunk at the time, according to some accounts. So we may never get the actual account of what took place that night. But anyway, I had no clue any of this had happened. None. I had no clue Shawn had been attacked and he was injured. I had no clue the Undertaker was hurt. So I'm thinking to myself, I'm psyched for the show. I want to see the Undertaker beat the crap out of Mabel. I want to see Shawn Michaels beat Dean Douglas. I want to see Bulldog get defeated by Diesel. Then we find out at the top of the show from then President Gorilla Monsoon that Shawn Michaels will not compete. He will forfeit the Intercontinental title to Razor Ramon. Or no, sorry, I'm jumping the gun here. Forfeit the Intercontinental title to Dean Douglas, who will then defend against Razor Ramon, who will be pulling double duty. The Undertaker's also out, and Mabel and Yokozuna will fight. I'm like, oh, that'll be interesting. So, yeah, there it is. I'm like, what the hell? Then we hear the story about Shawn being attacked, going into the show and whatnot, getting Undertaker's injuries. So I'm thinking, okay, well, this is kind of disappointing. But yeah, I'd love to see Razor Ramon. I love Razor Ramon. Love to see him win the Intercontinental title. And then I found out the best news of that night. Bret Hart is going to be the number one contender for the WWF Championship and will face the winner of this match at Survivor Series, the Diesel Bulldog match. I'm like, yes. But see, here was a smart thing. Now, Bret and Diesel kind of had this unsettled rivalry where they had fought twice before on pay-per-view. Bret had been disqualified in the first one at King of the Ring the year prior. The Royal Rumble match earlier in the year in January '95 ended in a no contest pretty much. So that would have been intriguing itself, plus the history of Bret and Bulldog, now that Bulldog is a heel. So it's like, maybe Bulldog might win. Maybe that'll be a match at Survivor Series. Reference, they could throw back to Bret and Bulldog at SummerSlam. So I'm thinking, okay. And that's what I said to my dad before the show started. I don't know who's going to win because I told him those things. I said, well, Bret and Bulldog have a rivalry dating back a few years ago. Now Bulldog's a bad guy. Diesel and Bret have not settled their little friendly rivalry at that time. They were both baby faces. So I'm thinking to myself, well, this really could turn out to be really cool. So I should reiterate the time now. I talk about friends and family liking wrestling. At this point, my cousins liked wrestling. But they weren't really coming over a lot for pay-per-views at this time. For whatever reason. I don't know why. My friends, the only friends I had in I was in middle school at this point. I was in grade 7. The only friends I had that enjoyed wrestling in that class was my friend Adam Pryor, who pretty much watched a lot of these things anyway from his own place, from what I understand. Or if he didn't, he got tapes of them. I don't know. And again, the other people that liked wrestling in my class, they didn't like me or they picked on me, whatever. So I would sometimes talk about it with them. But really, yeah. So Adam was really the only close friend I had that liked wrestling. Again, the cousins did too. But they didn't seem too captivated by what was going on lately. They were more intrigued by WCW. My cousin Jeffrey was still the only one really that was as passionate as I was at this point. I remember we watched Halloween Havoc a week later. I'll get into that at the end of the show. That'll be a nice little bonus. So, as the show begins, it's Fatu versus Hunter. Keep in mind, Triple H is not a big star at this point. But he's committed to the character. I will give him that. I couldn't care less about this match at the time. Helmsley I thought was annoying. Fatu, the whole make a difference thing, I'm like, I'd rather see him as a head shrinker. It just was there. Whatever. Helmsley won the match. And I'm thinking to myself, I hope this gets better. I remember my dad was watching it in the rec room on Longfield Drive with me. And I believe during this match, he turned the channel to the Sunday Night Football game quickly because he even said, well, you're not interested in the match. That's me, though. I get paranoid that he's changing the channel. He's not changing it back. We don't like this match. And he does the football game, changes it back just in time to see the Smoking Guns defend their tag team titles against Razor Ramon and the 1-2-3 Kid. Now, there was tension between Ramon and the Kid for better part of a month or so, several weeks. And they were trying to patch things up and go for the tag team titles. Now, this sounds familiar to me. I remember saying to my dad, that's what Brett Nolan tried to do. And then my dad's like, well, there you go. It's going to happen. Kid's going to turn on him. So I was right into this match. I actually like the Smoking Guns, too. Maybe I'm in the minority on that one. I like the Smoking Guns. I don't know. Just something about them. I mean, I liked country music even as a kid back then. Maybe that was it. I had no idea. I just thought they were cool. I thought they were fun to watch. I don't know. But I'm going for Ramon and the Kid here. Because I like the 1-2-3 Kid too. I didn't want to see him become a bad guy. Now, as I'm watching this match, I'm thinking to myself, yeah, they're not winning. As maybe like a few minutes in, I'm thinking Ramon and the Kid aren't winning. And I remember the oh god, it was the opposite of Brett Nolan in the sense where Brett was portrayed by Owen as the selfish one who wouldn't go for the tag. And I thought the ending was cool, the Razor's Edge on Billy. But I'm all jumping. I'm thinking, yes, he's going to win the tag title and he's going to win the Intercontinental title later tonight. Nope. Kid wants the tag. And that pretty much does it for him. And then Kid, of course, has a temper tantrum. I remember my dad saying, oh, poor baby. I got upset because, hey, I love the 1-2-3 Kid. I'm like, hey. Well, he shouldn't have asked for the tag. I'm like, good point. I kind of shrugged my shoulders thinking, yeah, I guess that's true. So, Razor, of course, makes peace with everyone. Kid's turn's coming. I'm just waiting for it now. Like, I don't want the Kid to be bad. I remember saying that to my dad. I don't want the Kid to be bad. Well, he's going to be. That's all my dad said. So next up, we had Marty Jannetty against Goldust. Jannetty himself had only just come back, I think, about a month prior to this, maybe less. He hadn't been back very long, had a couple televised wins, so he was built up somewhat okay. Goldust, that entrance, oh my goodness. I thought that was pretty intriguing. I'm like, okay, he has an intriguing look. And I'm thinking, where do I know him from? So I'm watching this match and I'm thinking, what is this? It just isn't going anywhere. And then this is the match, though. Here's what distracted me from this match. Not necessarily drawing, not writing, not my dad switching to the football game. It was Chris Walby was in the crowd. Now, only CFL historians are going to get that reference, and I doubt very many of them are listening to this show right now, but I'll say it anyway. Chris Walby was an offensive lineman for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, was a multiple-time All-Star. He had 3 Grey Cup rings and is a Hall of Famer. He was also an analyst on CBC for CFL and CBC for a while. And I said to my dad, I said, is that Chris Walby? And he's looking, and he's like, I think it is. I think the Bombers were not playing that weekend, so it made perfect sense. It's in Winnipeg, and he's there front row watching the show. I'm like, oh my goodness. I thought, well, Chris Walby's a wrestling fan. I thought that was cool. So again, I remember during a minute in this match too, my dad switches to the football game. Actually, I kind of think of it. I don't think the football game had even started yet. I think it was that countdown show they aired on TSN. Well, it was from ESPN, but they aired it on TSN as well. Chris Berman was on it. He could go all the way. Love that. So I'm losing interest in this show in a big way. But then at the end of the match, my dad's looking at the TV closely. He's like, that's that Dustin Rhodes. I'm like, what? I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, I haven't seen Dustin for several months in WWE. I actually wondered where he had gone to not long before this. And it was, because some of the makeup had faded. I'm like, oh my goodness. Wow, Goldust. I thought, well, there's a connection for you. So yeah. Anyway, that match was, and then watching it again in hindsight too, the benefit of hindsight, it was bad even recently. Like, these two just were not clicking, and they're both great wrestlers. Yeah, so we can say what we want about Marty Jannetty today. Face facts, folks. At one time, he was a great wrestler. So, can't deny that. As batshit crazy as he may be now, guy just needs help. Bottom line. Anyway, I digress. So back to the show, it was Yokozuna and Mabel. This was them being punished for injuring The Undertaker, so they had to now face each other. And honest to goodness, I was looking forward to this. I don't know what it is about two large super heavyweights fighting each other that has intrigue, but it does. I remember the match being short. I remember being pissed off that it was short because I want to see these two kill each other. Have a leg drop. Leg drop party. But yeah, no, and then they got counted out. And I guess in hindsight, they still had to keep Mabel strong for The Undertaker. Yoko was still an upper tier guy at this point, pretty much. So I guess it made sense in a way. And I guess asking these two to go 10, 15 minutes, especially the way Yoko was looking at this point, my God, poor guy. It was probably smart that this match ended quick in hindsight, but I was pissed. And so were the fans. This is actually, other than the tag team title match, so one match that caught my eye so far. Come on. Even my dad was going into this. Yeah, I know in hindsight, even in watching it nowadays, take a shot every time I say hindsight, folks. I think I've said it now 7, 8 times. But watching this recently there, I'll say that, it was nothing fantastic, but it was pretty simple. Just two super heavyweights trying to out heavy one of another. So something was there at least. So next up is when things really get interesting. Shawn Michaels comes on out and he looks terrible. Terrible, my goodness. Like his face looked all scarred up. His eyes were discolored. Like it just, oh my God. Like, and I'm thinking, I said to my dad, I'm like, Shawn looks awful. And he said, well, whatever. That was my dad, yeah. He didn't care for Shawn Michaels. I'll probably talk about this on a future podcast. I honestly think Shawn Michaels winning the title, spoiler, several months after this at WrestleMania, I think that did my dad in as a fan, pretty much, if I had to guess. So this was kind of starting the road to sympathy for Shawn, trying to build that babyface sympathy. Yeah, what followed after this, of course, and I'm jumping ahead here, of course, was the concussion, the post-concussion syndrome, the collapse in the ring, the triumphant return at the Rumble, winning the Rumble, the boyhood dream, WrestleMania 12. To me, and again, people criticize it now looking back, but you really can't build a babyface to try to make your top guy better than that in 1995, 96. It was a wholehearted effort to make Shawn the sympathetic top guy, to be the guy that fans, to try to build him as to be the guy that fans love above all. And again, people go on about, the number Shawn drew later on as champion and how the company wasn't doing well. WCW was taking over the Monday Night War. To a point, it accomplished something. To a point, I believe Shawn Michaels' title reign was not the failure people make it out to be. A lot of the matches were great. Some of the feuds weren't exactly the best. But Shawn did as best he could, and it has become a part of his legacy, that title reign. So I don't think it's a complete failure that people say it is. Again, like I say, it's a failure from a money drawing standpoint. Okay, they have a point there. But look at the legacy Shawn has now. I think most fans don't give a crap about that. Especially most of his fans. So, for me, as my fan of Shawn, because Shawn was one of the guys I absolutely despised when he was a heel. But I was getting into him at this point. I mean, okay, you know what? I knew he was talented. I'm like, this guy's fun to watch. At 12 years old, I'm thinking, this guy's a lot of fun to watch in the ring. Even before that, I'm thinking, okay, I'm enjoying watching him. Even when he's heel, I hate this guy, but I'm not going to change the channel or get distracted when he's on. Shawn Michaels was never one of those guys that would divert my attention away from the show. I was always watching him when he was on. So there you go. So he hands over the title, very, teary-eyed, kind of, not fully crying, but you can see his eyes kind of doing that thing where they water up, kind of. Tries to hand the title to Gorilla. Of course, Douglas snatches it from his grasp, and that was easy, And then Shawn, there was a famous shot. They played it in the Tell Me a Lie tribute video. It's a shot of Shawn just sullenly looking back at the ring at Dean Douglas holding his title, and then his eyes almost watering up, and then just turning around and just walking away. Oh. Okay, so I'm going to go to the Tell Me a Lie video. Okay, when they did the post-concussion angle with Shawn a month after this, and question whether he'd ever come back again, they played a video to this very cheesy K-Light FM, Hamiltonians will get that, K-Light FM Jim Brickman style ballad with the vocalist from a female called Tell Me a Lie. Watching this now, like, oh my god. But Call Me Crazy, I like that song. I don't know what it is. I guess in a way it just brings back a time, like, again, the point of this podcast, it brings back a time where it brings back memories of being a fan of this stuff. As a kid, I felt sympathy for Shawn. As a 37-year-old, though, nope. Not with this video. I mean, the stuff, the collapse in the ring, I mean, you can't do that stuff today, especially when you think of what happened with Matt Hardy recently. You can't do that stuff today, but for 1995, I thought it was effective in some ways. And again, it was a good way to try to build sympathy on a guy they're trying to make their number one guy. And Bret Hart, what helped make him number one was the sympathy that he had in a lot of his feuds. So there you go. I could see the logic that Vince was going for here. But anyway, so back to the show here. Now, let's check out that Tell Me a Lie video. Cheesiest thing you'll ever see, but by God, so cheesy you just can't look away, and you probably want to watch it again. And listen to that song. And that song is catchy. For a ballad, for a cheesy ballad, it's catchy. And it's on my iPod. I will fully admit that right now. It is on my iPod, along with I'll Be Your Hero, the Lex Luthor song from the Lex Express in '93. Along with many other really, really tacky wrestling songs. I don't have it on my iPod anymore, but on my old iPod I had Together, the Macho Man and Elizabeth song. Yeah, just part of that thing that makes me remember things fondly. I don't know. I mean, yeah, the songs are bad, but who gives a crap? So, moving on. Sorry. Let me compose myself here. So, back to the show. The Razor Ramon comes right out. We have the match right away. And I'm excited. Like, okay, Razor is going to become a 4-time Intercontinental Champion. The first 4-time Intercontinental Champion. I am psyched about this. Screw you, Dean Douglas. So, the match itself, I remember at the time thinking, okay, this is, I'm just going for Razor again. I was into Razor. So, despite the fact that watching this match now with fresh eyes, it's like, And again, knowing the Click's history with Dean Douglas, or Shane Douglas, sorry, whatever, it kind of makes sense maybe why this Razor wasn't really giving him too much here. So, suplex, pinfall, his feet have broken the plane of the ropes, and Razor's the Intercontinental Champion. I jump up out of the chair for the first time this entire show, which I used to do a lot. Jump out of the couch, sorry. Remember, we had a big green couch back then. That's another story for another day. Ensuring Razor winning. But I'm thinking, okay, so Douglas shouldn't have been counted 3. And even my dad points this out. I said, I'll probably just lead to a rematch. It did. Razor won that too. It didn't really build into a big story at all. So there you go. I was happy. So happy that Razor was a 4-time Intercontinental because I love the badass character of Scott Hall, Razor Ramon. Say hello to Razor. On my previous episode, talking about Saturday Night's Main Event, yes, in the archives, Razor caught fire quick as an intriguing character. He was money, it seemed. He reeked of money. Watching those old vignettes, yeah, say what you want about the accent, whatever. Paul got it over. You know, you're making fun of it now you want, but he got it over. Those vignettes, him riding this custom car, him not paying the tab at a restaurant, shoving people into fountains. He was money. And yet he was one of those guys as a kid, I thought, when he first came in as a heel, like, man, I hate this guy, but I can't take my eyes off him. Same thing like I said with Shawn Michaels. Ramon had that intrigue where you just couldn't stop watching him because he is such a badass kind of character. And when he became a good guy, he didn't really change all that much. He was just facing bad guys. That's all it really was at the end of the day. People say how, Stone Cold Steve Austin was groundbreaking in that regard. Austin is groundbreaking in a million different ways. I'm not disputing that. Yes, he was groundbreaking in more ways than I'll ever be able to count. But there were guys like Razor, like if you even go back to the territory, like Dirty White Boy. If you don't know who Dirty White Boy is, YouTube him. Dirty White Boy, big star in Continental, had a great run at Smoky Mountain. He was a badass who became a babyface in Smoky Mountain, but yet didn't really change all that much. Again, he's just feuding with heels. And they don't ignore the fact that he was a bad guy. And speaking of bad guy, Razor still called himself the bad guy right up till he left the company. That was his big thing, the bad guy, oozing machismo and all that stuff. It caught on with fans. Razor was very popular. I think people underestimate how popular he really was. And it's true, Razor did not change the character, or Hall did not change the character all that much. So yeah, he's still cocky, he was still, yeah. But for some reason, his character just caught on with fans. He turned, and I was right into him right away because I thought this guy is pretty cool. So now on to the main event. So Bret Hart would be sitting in for commentary, and his hilarious spot where Bret pretty much scares Lawler away, everything like that. It was so funny. And it was good, again, having him at ringside here told the story of him being the number one contender. Because I think after Bret, since that Royal Rumble match against Diesel in January, hadn't had a title shot. So here's a guy who is at this point, a 2-time champion, had significantly long reigns. I mean, okay, maybe not compared to Hogan, but what I'm saying is Bret held the title for longer than 6 months on both occasions that he had held it. Or actually, no, the first reign, sorry, my bad, was under 6 months. I think a week or so away from 6 months. So my point is, half a year at least. His second reign was closer to 8 months. So I'm thinking, I don't care who wins this match in a way. I kind of want Diesel to win still because I wanted Bret to prove he's better than him. That was the thing about a babyface feud. I like the babyfaces, but I want my babyface, Bret Hart, the guy I've been cheering for years, to be the guy to be the champion again. And I want him to prove he's better than the current babyface, the top babyface Diesel. But at the same time, though, I love the SummerSlam match between Bret and Bulldog, and I also want to see that again, too. Spoiler, I'd get my wish on both. So I'm watching this match, and many stories and accounts of this match have come about, and I'll get to them in a second once I finish here. It's just kind of. I mentioned how I got distracted easily watching Diesel and Mabel. Well, I got distracted here too. To the point where I actually went and got another drink of pop during the match. I can tell my dad likes to nod off a lot. He still does to this day. Like kind of just have these power naps or whatever, and he kind of did during this match. I don't think he cared too much for Diesel either. I know he liked Bulldog. I think he was kind of going for Bulldog here. So again, that's a guy he'd been watching for many years. So I can hear him flip to the actual football game, which was on now. And I get back, he flips it back to the match, just in time. Like, my dad, for some reason, had good timing sometimes when it came to these things. To see Bulldog and Diesel on the outside at the commentary table. Diesel gets caught up in the heat of the moment and pie faces Brett. And Brett just, brushes out kind of, heat of the moment. Stuff like this happens. So I'm just waiting for this match to end. After a while, I'm thinking to myself, Brett's going to get involved somehow. He's going to accidentally cost somebody the match or something. I just know after that pie face, I'm thinking Brett's going to come in. I'm wondering what Brett's going to do. That's all I'm wondering this whole match is what Brett's going to do. Late in the match, Brett gets hit by Bulldog. That, of course, brings him in. Disqualification. So it's Brett Diesel. I'm like, okay. And then there was a little melee between Brett and Diesel. They slug it out. And I'm thinking, I'm excited for this now. Brett's finally going to prove he's better. So I was excited. Right away, I was excited for Survivor Series. Brett's going to prove he's the better man. Finally. Now, according to some accounts, some of them, again, were with the company at the time, including the Diesel himself, Kevin Nash, Bruce Pritchard, among others. I get, because Vince was at ringside doing commentary, I guess when he went backstage, he yelled something like, fucking terrible at them. And I guess from another story I heard, Bulldog was very apologetic about the match to the agents backstage. Pritchard got chewed out. I don't know. It's like a lot of stuff happened. I watched this match again not that long ago. And yeah, it ain't good. But I'm like, it's definitely far from the worst match I've seen, even in this era. You might even be able to put it in the 10 worst, but it just sometimes, again, I think Kevin Nash has talent. Yes, people do the big lazy, blah, 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 blah. He has talent, whether you want to admit it or not. And there are times he will click, no pun intended, with the right guy. Because he has many times. Bulldog just wasn't that guy. And again, Navy Boy. Amazing. But again, nothing was molding there. Nothing was happening there. It's safe to say, but spoiler, Brett winning the title next month, that Diesel probably would never be relied on to be a babyface again, top babyface again. And literally, 7 months or so later, Diesel's off to participate in one of the biggest angles in the history of professional wrestling when he goes to WCW. Yes, the formation of the NWO. Check that out in the archives as well, folks. For Bulldog, it didn't seal his fate as a main event guy. Why? Because he was main eventing 2 pay-per-views later with Bret Hart. Again, a really underrated match, the one they had at In Your House 5 in December. Bulldog will go on to have a main event run with Shawn Michaels in a very peculiar storyline that I'll probably talk about on a future episode. Oh yeah, actually, Beware of Dog, that whole fiasco. Oh yes, that's definitely gonna be an episode probably in the New Year's time. I will be talking about that. And you know what? I will say, in regard to this pay-per-view, it may have gone down as one of the worst of all time if Halloween Havoc hadn't taken place a week later. Okay, to be fair, Halloween Havoc 95 was not near as bad as some people say it is. It's still not really good, but whatever. It had its moments. I like the match with DDP and Johnny B. Bad. But again, yes, the whole thing with the Giant. I remember, again, I watched that a week later. I'll probably do a whole podcast on this in the future, but probably not till next year or so. But so I'll just do a brief synopsis here. They have a sumo monster truck match between Hogan and the Giant. The Giant, of course, better known today as the Big Show, had not wrestled a single match in WCW. Come to think of it, I heard he had like one match, an indie match before this. But either way, you go from having an indie match to facing the biggest star of all time in the main event of a major pay-per-view for the championship. So there you go. The whole monster truck thing, yeah, the whole angle with Big Show laughing maniacally. So I still call him Big Show, Giant, whatever. He's in the monster truck against Hogan. The whole concept. Then they brawl out to the monster truck match is done. Hogan won that, and he falls off the building to his death. But the show goes on. Then he comes back unscathed for the main event. At 12 years old, I was still intrigued by this, and I'm thinking, here's the thing, though, about being a 12-year-old fan and stuff being crappy. Like, oh, this is ridiculous. Like, I remember looking at my cousin Jeffrey, and I think my Uncle Terry was sitting in the living room with us, and I can see him kind of just looking like, oh, this is pathetic. And I'm thinking, I look at Jeffrey, I'm like, this is weird. This is, I don't know. But you know what? After what happened here, Jimmy Hart betraying Hogan. Of course, you can forget the Yeti and the dry hump of doom with him. The double bear hug that him and the Giant and Yeti did to Hogan. Luger officially joining up with Jimmy Hart, Dungeon of Doom and whatnot. That alliance and Hulkamania. That was, okay, I'm like thinking, oh, wow, okay, kind of saw that coming, but still, at least it's finally happening. I wanted to watch Nitro. We didn't get Nitro live. I think still at this point, TSN hadn't even started airing it yet, I don't think. I had cable, so I got Saturday night. I used to be Saturday night, which I watched often. So I'd at least have to wait another week or so. So yeah. So luckily, maybe for In Your House 4, it wasn't even the worst pay-per-view that month. You can debate which one is worse. Again, I like the Johnny B. Bad DDP match from Halloween Havoc in 95. Oh, actually, you know what? I forgot to the Sting Flair angle. Even though Sting looked like a gullible idiot again, I loved it. I was a huge Sting fan. So, okay, so you know what? Halloween Havoc might have been better. But I think that whole thing with this thing, Halloween Havoc might have had better matches and a couple better angles than what WWF had for In Your House. But again, I just think it's because that Hogan and Giant thing is looked back on as such a horrible, horrible angle that it's deemed worse than even this. Because this show, In Your House 4, did not have anything catastrophically atrocious or awful. It just wasn't a great show. So, really, and yeah, you can debate that. Actually, oh man, you can debate that one so you're blue in the face. Let me know what you guys think. What was the worst show, Halloween Havoc 95 or In Your House 4 from Winnipeg? But that is going to do it for this week. Man, this was a really fun trip down what is, again, even what's deemed as the bad eras are still some of the most intriguing eras of wrestling to talk about. That's why I love it when Bruce Pritchard on his podcast would talk about like when they're losing the Monday Night War, stuff like that. To me, that's just more interesting. To me, these again, the good times are interesting as well. But I don't know, something about the bad times and what you felt as a fan during those bad times kind of helps shape your fandom as well. You know? So I hope you all enjoy listening to this. If you want to follow me on social media, I haven't plugged that in a while, actually. Bill Chase 33, both on Instagram and on Twitter. Give me a follow. Just plain Bill Chase on Facebook. Want to give me an ad? Just shoot me a line and say you listen to the podcast and whatever, and you like to talk wrestling. Hey, I'm all for it. I do have an episode coming up on the Montreal Screwjob. Yes, big spoiler. Yeah, no, not really. The Montreal Screwjob episode coming up in November. It's a two-parter. Of course, my account of the whole thing, which is quite extensive. And the second part, I'll be talking to fans alike about what their experiences were with the Screwjob back when it happened in 1997. Next week, oh boy, next week. Now, people were not complaining, but just saying, well, you to me, let's talk about WWF and WCW. So that's why I did the tape trading episodes, and they were actually a big success. So I'm going to go in a different direction as well for next week, when I will talk about Kurt Angle arriving in TNA. Yes, 2006. What a time it was for TNA wrestling. The first and only time I'd held a pay-per-view party for a TNA show. I will talk about Angle leaving the WWF or WWE. I will talk about his arrival in TNA. I will talk about his pay-per-view debut as a referee, but most of all, I'll be talking about Genesis 2006, his match against Samoa Joe, who at the time was almost untouchable in that TNA run. So talking about all that next week. It's going to be a lot of fun. My first TNA-themed episode. I figure it's episode 20. I know, not exactly a landmark in the grand scheme of things, but I figure it's a good round anniversary type number. Let's do something with it. And that's next week. Kurt Angle coming to TNA. So until next week, this is Bill Chase. This has been Diary of a Wrestling Fan. And I quote a very wise Hamiltonian when I remind you all, don't you dare miss it. Thank you for listening to Diary of a Wrestling Fan with Bill Chase. If you'd like to make a contribution to the show, just buy Evan Greenaway a pizza whenever you see him. I mean it, anytime you see him, buy him a pizza.